In April of 2020 in Windsor, Ontario, a man stood on trial in tears. By all accounts, he should have been dead. But instead he was accused of a crime that has been sweeping across Canada. And he was guilty. But the consequences of his crime were far worse than a criminal record. He had been caught stealing copper from an industrial site, something that most people would not consider noteworthy. It's theft, maybe breaking and entering. What's the big deal? Well, the man had risked more than he thought, and in the end, he paid the price. His story illustrates how the theft of copper is one of the most hazardous crimes that you can commit. Let's dive in. Before we delve into the courtroom and this man's story, we must understand the danger that copper theft poses to all Canadians. With the cost of living at an all-time high and the price of precious metals, including copper, climbing everywhere, the temptation for people to try and steal it and make a quick buck is greater than ever. Copper is expensive, but it's also accessible. It's in everything: cables for internet, landline services, air conditioners, computers, pipes, motors, you name it. And some larger scale items like a transformer can hold hundreds of pounds of it. For criminals with the right tools and an eye for vulnerable sites with limited security, it can seem like easy money. But copper theft is not a victimless crime, even if its target is a large corporation. Damaged appliances and equipment harm small businesses, take up the time of public services, and cost communities plenty of money to address, both directly and indirectly. If we have to change our entire infrastructure, how long before that cost gets passed down to taxpayers? Beyond the financial impact, there's also the risk of losing services that we all depend on. Removing copper causes a disruption to phone service and internet access. You might not be able to call your friend, but hospitals and airports may not be able to make any calls at all. Even emergency services such as 911 could be unavailable. These types of disruptions are only becoming more frequent. Bell Canada reported that as of July 2025, there have been more than 500 incidents of copper theft on their property. Most thefts are minor and crimes of opportunity, but some are absolutely insane, such as this theft that took place just north of Sudbury, Ontario. Over the course of a week, thieves cut down more than 30 hydro poles at a generating station and stripped them for over $100,000 worth of copper. They were ultimately caught, but not before completing their plan, as the poles were in an isolated area. This brazen theft represents a growing interest in exploiting copper. If you have hundreds of thousands of dollars just sitting there waiting for the right person who knows how to take it, you have a problem. Collected copper can be melted down and sold to scrap collectors who ask few questions. Major telecoms have been sounding the alarm about copper theft for years, but they've struggled to capture public attention. Until it causes your power to go out, it's tough to get people to care. The hunt is on for manufacturers to seek cheaper alternatives to copper for their future systems, making them less appealing to thieves. But still, there's already hundreds of thousands of miles of copper in the ground. Education is needed for citizens to recognize the signs and respond by reporting suspected thefts, but awareness for would-be thieves is equally essential, letting them know that their actions can result in severe injury or even death. On August 22, 2023 in British Columbia, thieves targeted a closed restaurant to steal copper pipe. In the process of removing it, they damaged a natural gas line. One of them unknowingly ignited the gas, causing an explosion that sent 3 to the hospital. Also in 2023, a Nova Scotia man was killed while attempting to steal copper from a power substation. He was hit by 25,000 volts of electricity and killed instantly, and he left behind a family to grieve. There are very real safety concerns, but some people may take the risk if they're desperate enough. So perhaps if death isn't enough to dissuade people, maybe the threat of living with the consequences of a failed copper theft will. Let's go back to the man in court, a copper thief. We'll call him Graham. It was 2020, weeks before the world was shut down. But for Graham, it was as if his world had already ended. The judge called the courtroom to order, and Graham was led in through a side door, handcuffed and legs chained. He made his way to the prisoner's dock slowly, so slowly that you would have had time to notice just how fragile he seemed. One of the most shocking things about him were his hands. At first glance, it looked like he was wearing gloves. Massive amounts of scarring on his hands gave that illusion. He held them out in front of them as if they were permanently fixed in place, and they remained that way the entire time. He sat down, his face drawn with pain. The judge read his charges: break and enter and possession of break and enter tools. The prosecutor detailed the facts of the case before the court. Over a year and a half ago, just after noon on a regular weekday, police responded to a call at an industrial building after reports were received that a man had been gravely injured. Upon arrival, they found Graham unconscious, suffering from injuries consistent with electrocution. Once the site was secured, paramedics transported him to the hospital in critical condition. Investigators found break-and-enter tools at the scene and a hole in the fence leading to the transformer where they had found him. Most of the area was rarely monitored, which made the fact that Graham had been found alive all the more remarkable. Police cleared the site, issued a warning to the public, reminding them of the extreme danger of tampering with electrical equipment, and subsequently charged Graham. It was an open and shut case. After the prosecutor finished, Graham's defense lawyer picked up the narrative and offered context. They did not deny what he had been accused of. Instead, they explained that Graham had been struggling with homelessness and believed that copper theft was the best way to get some money while not harming anyone directly. He didn't have any personal or professional support. That was still true even in court. No one had attended to be there with him. He had no one in his corner aside from the court-appointed defense. Graham was and had been alone, so what did he have to lose? His recovery in the hospital was brutally long. After months upon months of relearning and physical therapy, he was released from the hospital, only to be moved to jail, where he awaited his criminal trial. Despite no longer being hospitalized, he continued to be in poor health. He struggled with limited mobility, nerve damage, and the loss of significant motor function. He had burns across his body, difficulty speaking, and an irregular heartbeat that required constant monitoring. And that was just the physical side. He had effectively lost his independence, having to relearn basic skills. He couldn't write, eat, or hold objects without agony. The mental toll compounded his already fragile state. He would never be able to work or support himself again, all because of a few dollars worth of copper. There was an air of pity in the courtroom. You could see it on the judge's face when he stopped the lawyer mid-sentence. His voice softened. "I've heard enough," he said. "It looks like you've been punished enough." He asked the bailiff to remove the cuffs from Graham. The room went silent. Then Graham broke down. He hadn't said much over the course of his trial, mostly looking down and letting the lawyer do the talking. But now his sobs could be heard throughout the courtroom. Tears of a man who had lost everything, and now had been given something back. The verdict was still guilty, but with time served and his permanent disability, the judge deemed further imprisonment unreasonable. Graham was led away, still crying, as the next case began. Slowing down copper theft won't come from harsher sentences alone. It will take prevention and awareness, better site security, stricter tracking at scrapyards, stronger cooperation between companies and law enforcement, and compassion, engagement with people who are struggling, and an understanding of what drives them. We can build higher fences and brighter lights, but people will still take the risk if they think that it's the only way to survive. Protecting property utilizing copper is costly, and monitoring every inch of it is impossible. The federal government has introduced Bill C-14, a proposal aimed at increasing penalties in crimes involving telecommunications infrastructure and retail theft. It would allow courts to treat copper theft that damages communities and increases safety issues as aggravating factors during sentencing. Pretty much means that offenders could face harsher penalties. But will these measures be enough? Maybe it's time to engage with thieves directly, to share stories of the real impacts, not to inspire fear, but to address a grim reality. As tempting as it may be, copper theft just isn't worth the price. So, what do you think of the story of Graham and the rise of copper theft in Canada? Is it a major concern, or is it something that is impossible to address? Let me know what you think, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for listening.